first flight of the orbiter Discovery, and the shuttle has cleared the tower.
Welcome to the Health or Highwater.
Hello, guys. Welcome to the 21st episode of Health or Highwater. I'm your co-host, Tripp Parks, with the handsome Finnish boy, Bret Hutari.
The handsome Finnish boy. Oh, dear.
This is going to be a rough episode. Well, hey, guys, we want to thank you guys so much for following along with us. All you new downloadees over in New York, Montana, Ohio, Germany too. Thank you guys so much. Make sure you guys are liking, subscribing, and reviewing us. You know, give us a little review on there. Make sure you guys are following us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, all your social media places. We are so grateful for all of your support, and we have an excellent episode on something that is hindering a lot of people's lives right now, and that's posture. Bret here is the posture expert, recovery expert, PT. And we're going to go into just some commonalities of posture, what's going wrong with it, how we can improve your guys' life through that, and just kind of discuss it generally. Bret, what is posture, and what's going on with that in today's world?
Yeah, I want to get into that. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for the people who are first joining us, number one, who are new to this podcast. And then also thank you so much to the people who have been following this journey. We hope that we're bringing you amazing content that is relevant and makes a difference in your life. And also thank you so much for sharing the podcast, and also to the guests that we've had on who've been incredible. But yes, getting into what is posture. Simply put, so your skeleton is made up of muscles on top of it, and those muscles serve a purpose, and we have the ability to move in certain directions based off, our joints and hinging, and our muscles are there to hold us in place and to create these movements. And so we sit a lot more now than we ever have before in history, due to the desk jobs. And so posture actually has become something to talk about. I think 80% of people, 80 to 85% of people are actually sitting while they work, or sitting more than normal. So you're starting to see all these postural issues. So posture, essentially, to answer your question, is going to be the most ergonomical way that your body is supposed to function, with your shoulders back, chest out, chin up, all those things.
Do you think, excuse me, do you think it's turned into an epidemic of posture? I mean, you see everyone down on their phones and whatnot. We see constant trap injuries in here.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Yeah. We're seeing it a lot more. I'm talking about postural issues a ton more than ever before.
And let's say someone comes into the studio and they have a posture issue. What are some things that you look for and look at?
Number one, the way they're walking tells you so much. Well, actually, before that you even see them walk, you see the way somebody stands, and you can see immediately, the energy they express from just the way they stand, where they're holding their shoulders, where their chin position is. Then once you start to see the way they walk, you get to get an idea of more. And then when you get to see the way they move, hinge, reach in certain directions, you get an idea of what muscles are tight, and then why those muscles are tight.
So getting a little deeper into that, so a lot of, all muscles are sympathetic to each other. One muscle starts to get tight, other muscles try to compensate, and you start seeing injuries from there, right? Do you see a lot of that coming due to posture issues? Like we just said, sitting down, all these computer and phone usage, not a lot of time actually moving around. We're very sedentary nowadays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just correlated to the amount of time they sit.
Right.
And then mostly guys have a lot of kyphosis, which is fancy term. It just means your shoulders are rolled forward. You have more, your chest dominant. And it depends too. People are genetically have different, what's it called? They're built different based off, where they hold their muscle mass, where they have their fat. And so that accentuates, their posture misalignments. Having perfect posture is very rare too. You have to remember that.
Well, I understand that we're I forget what I was talking about there for a second. Shit.
Did you get hungry again?
I was looking at my protein bar. I was like, but it's looking to crinkle.
It's almost time to eat for you. Yeah, the Posture is a huge thing to think of. I think every time I start talking about posture, people immediately sit up straight. But the thing is that how this incorporates into injuries, I don't think a lot of people realize how many injuries come from posture. And one huge thing that I see, especially for guys, is the rounded upper back. That's a genetic thing. And you can see that 40 years in advance. You can start to see. So you can, if you start to see these things, you can fix it. You can address it with the way you're exercising, with the exercises you select, with recovery modalities, and some other things. It's huge. Posture is a huge thing to talk about, discuss, and we can get into, a lot of the long-term physiological effects of it.
So I want to get into the what. So we kind of understand that, leaning over is bad for your posture and whatnot. I know we're on an audio podcast. It's going to be kind of hard to explain. But to your best ability, explain what good posture looks like throughout the body.
The military. Think about the military stance. Think about, a whole form of troops that are standing there with their heels together, shoulders back and down, chest out, chin up, proud chest. That's all you have to think when you think great posture. Just think the military.
So I'm going to go into a kind of, it sounds a little funnier here, but I was actually thinking about this while we're getting ready for this episode. So I got to think a thing a while ago, it was about 5 years ago, called a squatty potty. Yeah, right?
I remember.
Is there a certain posture that you need to do to go to the bathroom? Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Now, I guess there's a spectrum or discrepancy on how much it affects you. But yeah, when you look at a natural posture for that. Yeah, there's some science behind that, but like I said, I don't know necessarily how much that if that's enough of an effect to have to change the way you live on that. I'll leave that up to somebody else to decide.
Just don't want to strain anymore.
But yeah, no, there's a reason why that exploded. In popularity.
Well, another reason I was saying that was I was watching a TV show the other day, and this person was traveling to India, and they're asking for the bathroom, and they're like, "Which one do you want to use?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, women's or men's?" He's like, "No. What kind of toilet do you want to use?" Because they have the Western toilets, and they have the Indian toilets where you squat and go into a hole.
Yeah. So if you that's a good point. If you look at babies and the way they squat down, look at the way a baby would squat down, and we lose that over time. But a baby squats feet flat, completely balanced, all the way butt down to the ground, because that's comfortable and that's natural for their bodies. And as we get older and we absorb injuries and we start to decrease our flexibility, we start to squat differently. Now, the squat in general is a fascinating thing to get into, because then when you start talking about the fitness squat, you can start to dissect it into different areas, such as the low bar squat, the high bar squat. We can get into the depths of that, which is really cool when you get into bodybuilding and powerlifting and the difference between that. But the big thing is that adults today, we don't squat in our daily life all the way down to depth for almost any purpose, but we have the capability. So it's interesting.
Well, speaking of that, you see a lot of people picking things up with their back and not with their legs.
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally, especially in the trades.
So would you recommend people to start being conscious of that and hey, instead of me bending over with my back, let me go ahead and try to squat in a natural position? And after answering that, what is a natural position to squat in?
Dude, such a great, really good question. So picture golf. Most people don't watch golf, but have seen a hole or two. Picture the way a golfer picks up a ball out of the hole. I guarantee you have never in your life seen a professional golfer pick a ball up out of the hole with bad posture.
Maybe John Daly.
And even John Daly, especially John Daly, they have perfect alignment. They hinge at the hip and they kick one leg back for balance because they've trained that. Golf is a game of etiquette. So to get to your question, you want to train the idea of proper spinal alignment on any hinge movement. It's something that's trained. You don't think about, I'm going to squat down with. So these are things we want to bring people into the gym and train these, so they're not something consciously you have to think about. It's just the way you perform, picking up weeds or whatever it is.
Well, and to speak on that too, I have terrible posture. It's something I've been working on for 5 years now. doing foam rolling, stretching, making sure my body is flexible enough to get in the alignment for right posture. And something I do is like I'll always like not check myself in the mirror, but I'll check my posture out in the mirror.
Yeah.
Elevators, whatever.
Yeah.
And try to use that as a gauge. So like I'll look at myself in the mirror, it's like, oh, my chin's down. Get your chin up, put your back out. Right. And that's something you guys can do too. Is you can do like daily checks. We're talking about breathing exercise and stuff like that. Like when you're again sitting in an elevator, you can do some box breathing. When you're in there, check on your posture at the same time. It doesn't take any time to you, and you're waiting anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely a mental thing for sure, and we can always look in the mirror and correct our posture, and then just the big thing too to remember is like most people don't think about posture throughout the day. And so what happens over the course of 5 years, 7 years, 10, over the course of when they're not focused on it, they're leaning over. So let's take that idea into the weight room when we're doing our exercises and reinforce the muscles that are, important for our posture so that we don't have skeletal issues, because the muscles start to cave and then the ligaments and the tendons start to, turn into a direction they shouldn't be turning into, and then the bones eventually. There's a lot that goes into it.
Well, how does this really fit into health profiling with everything else? Like, let's say you're just doing a workout, you're not doing recovery, you're not stretching. How does that affect everything else negatively?
Oh, dude, it's huge. It's huge when you're looking at somebody health profiling wise. You're taking the whole thing into perspective, right? Their genetics, their supplementation, their blood work, their posture, their stress levels, their lifestyles. And for me, I think posture tells so much about somebody. Stress levels, where they hold their stress. And there's a lot of different stuff. So it's probably one of the first things I notice about somebody. It plays a huge role in the health profiling.
What about first impressions too, right? So you only have a first impression, right? If you're all hunched over, your chin's not up, you're not making eye contact. There is a negative aspect to this in the business, professional, and even social world, right?
Yeah.
Meeting women, all these other things, they're effective. What are some things we can do throughout the day to make sure that we don't have these negative side effects happen and whatnot?
One thing. We are always expressing our energy through our posture. Always expressing our energy through our posture. And you brought up women. There's a lot of things, beyond that too, that we have to realize we have a message of some sort. Whatever our message is in life, it's all different. It's up to the person. But we're always communicating that message with our words and with our body language and with our posture. So we need to constantly be thinking about how we're expressing our message best. So there's a lot of things throughout the day you can do. One of the best things, public speaking, is people practice in mirrors. Also, and now I found out in other professions, people on the phone, what they do now for big companies, especially, banking industry, is they'll have you put a mirror in front of you while you're on the phone. Because we don't realize that our tone is inflected differently based off us looking at ourselves. Musicians practice in the mirror. So this is a huge concept. It's biohacking at its greatest.
And that's why they have mirrors in gyms, right?
Totally. It's not just for the narcissistic, hey, I look great, although you see that all the time. You're like, I look amazing. It's about trying to figure out, hey, is my spine in alignment? Are my elbows at the same height? Are my shoulders at the same height? Okay, there's a lot that goes into that.
Oh, 100%. I think it's an important part to take the ego out and make sure that you're doing things properly.
Totally.
Again, whether you're walking again into the elevator with mirrors or you're in the gym or whatnot, making sure your form is perfect. We've all seen the person at the gym who's got the worst form ever, hunched over, doing a ton of weight they shouldn't be doing, and it's just an injury waiting to happen. Right?
Yeah.
Let's speak on those people real quick. The people that are ego lifting, that they don't care about their form, they don't care about their posture.
Yeah, yep, definitely.
That's a huge issue going on. There's a lot of people that are influencers that are out there that are like telling everybody what to do and whatnot. And I'm pretty sure you just came out with a video on YouTube about deadlifting, deadlifting, and this a little bit with hinge movements or whatnot. Let's kind of go into the workout portion of posture. We kind of talked about lifestyle. Let's dive into the deadlift and then the squat, about proper form and whatnot.
Yeah, deep. So we could talk a while about the deadlift and squat and posture. I think the first place to start is use an alignment stick. One thing as a personal trainer I've noticed is so few personal trainers teach the hinge properly. They almost never teach it, and they don't know how to progress it. And I'd say 80% of the people coming into personal train don't have proper hinge form. Hinge form happens when your body is bending down to pick something up. Your hips have to simultaneously rotate forward in order to maintain that spinal alignment. So what happens is most people, when they bend down to pick something up, their hips stay pretty square. And so all of that stress is placed on their lower back, right? Their spine. Now, if you're just bending down to pick something up in the day that's light, you don't notice it. Do that a few thousand times over the course of, or you start adding weight to that, it causes a ton of issues. So we need to find ways as trainers and just people in general on how to have that forward anterior pelvic tilt. So that's what it's called, is when the hips tilt forward. We need to find ways to train that. So the posture stick is a great way to do it. And also as a trainer, we got to be cueing that through videos. I've always found that most people really respond to a video. If you show them a video of like, hey, look at how your back is a little bit rounded, they respond immediately to that.
So what's a posture stick, and how can people get a hold of one?
Get your broomstick, go into your closet right now. You don't need to buy a posture stick, although shout out to my buddy from my last gym who actually bought me a posture stick, and he always wanted to call it a posture stick. Go and get a broomstick, unscrew the handle, hold it on your back. It should connect to your head, your upper back, and your butt. And as you bend over, it should maintain contact with all 3 points.
And this is with that front hinge motion, right, for deadlifts?
Correct. This is with a conventional deadlift. This is with a Romanian deadlift or stiff-legged deadlift. 2 different variations. A conventional requires you to actually bend your legs to actually go down into a squat after hinging, and a Romanian or stiff deadlift is actually using your hips as a pure fulcrum and then just swinging over, but still keeping mechanical advantage by maintaining that postural alignment.
Well, that's amazing information, because there's so many people doing all those motions wrong. Let's touch on squats now, because squats are a natural motion, whether you're taking a poop.
Yep.
Or you're picking something up off the ground or working out.
Yep.
So where does the squat start here, and how do we do it right?
So you got to maintain balance on the heels and the front of your feet, front of your toes as balance points. Typically, your heels are going to have about 70% of your weight, and then maybe about 30%, maybe 25 to 30 on your toes for balance. The more weight that's on your heels, the more your hamstrings are going to engage. The more weight that's on your toes, the more your front of your calves, your quads, the front, even the back part of your calves or your gastros are going to engage. So there does want to be a balance there. There's 2 really different ideas, and then we can break it down into subsectors. Yeah. But the high bar squat and the low bar squat. The high bar squat is placed higher up on your back. Bodybuilders use it more because it's more quad engagement. You're much more upright. Your legs are closer together. Your toes are flared out. Then there's the low bar squat that powerlifters use. It's mechanically, you can lift more weight. Okay, the weight's going to be shifted way more to your hips, way more to your glutes. Girls typically use the low bar squat because they have structural, not issues, but they're not as strong in their lower back area, so they lean forward with the low bar squat. So if you've seen the 2 distinct squats, those are kind of the 2 squats you want to have, and then we can kind of break it up from there.
What about foot position? There's a lot of different not conspiracies, but thoughts on where to keep your feet. Mm-hmm. When I'm doing stuff, I try to do many different variations, close together, far apart. I try to keep it a little fresh with everything, because I think that every single time you move your feet, that it works different muscle groups.
Yeah.
So how do you use those variations the right way?
Yeah, great point. Yeah, trying to experiment with different ones. So it comes down to your hip flexibility too, to decide what squat is right for you. And this goes into genetics too.
Right. So there's the skeletal frame aspect to this too. Your leg length,
Yes.
of both parts, right? So there's something involved with that too.
Totally, 100%. And you can tell this when you're watching somebody squat who's picked a stance that isn't in alignment with their genetics or the way their body is set up. And this is where great trainers, like you and I, kind of come into play, is like deciphering some of these things. But when they're too narrow, you'll see the weight shift to the outsides of their feet. All the weight shifts to the outsides of their feet, and their toes will lose contact, and their toes will start to open up. And so those are instances where maybe we can start to address it and start to address those imbalances, or we can pick a different stance that's wider, and maybe low bar squat is the right stance for them if they want to continue to program squats in at a heavy, interval or frequency.
Right. So what you're saying basically is, start with the form that works best for you. Work on some recovery and flexibility so you can do these other motions, but start with something that feels natural and that works properly for your body type.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Now, something else I wanted to talk about that, now they're on the topic of feet and posture, is a huge thing that's going on right now is shoes.
Yeah.
Right? And I want to talk about these narrow-toed shoes, our natural foot position, us having more spread apart toes to use more. So I know I'm kind of throwing a lot of this at you with this, but
Love it.
I want to talk about shoes and how they affect our posture.
Sure.
And then what we can do to make them better, and then these other little ideas of these open-toed shoes that let our feet spread out and whatnot. So what's your kind of idea generally? We'll kind of dive into those three. Yeah, aspects.
Perfect phrase. Think Bruce Lee, right? Think those little slippers. Remember the slippers that he would wear?
Yeah.
Right, really thin, so almost like there's no bottom. That's the ideal situation. So the thinnest possible. Now, I guess let me throw it back to you. It depends what scenario you're in. So if you're just walking around during the day, you want a thin shoe that allows you to maintain the contact with the ground. Don't get thick-soled. You don't want thick-soled shoes to be walking around during the day. When you get into running, we can talk about a running shoe for sure. But if you're just talking about walking around during the day, doing your blah, 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 Nike has a great brand. I'm actually wearing them myself. Incredibly thin, okay? It keeps the natural form of your foot, right? So you have flexibility there. You want your feet to have that flexibility throughout the day. You don't want to be flat-footed and train your body to have that flat foot. In the gym, always really flat. I've seen people go shoeless.
I did for about a year and a half.
Yeah, in their socks and stuff like that. And not the end of the world. I would still stick with a shoe just because it gives you more. If you're squatting or lifting weight, I'd say stick with a shoe, but just keep it flat. Keep a flat shoe.
So that brings me to the next point here is these shoe companies out there, they're now designing around the arches are tight, but where the toes and the top part of the foot come out are wide. So you can start building those toe muscles in there. What do you think about those shoes?
There's better ways to train it. Here's my thought process is do not change your shoes to fit your feet. Only do it temporarily. Don't change your shoes as a long-term solution to foot imbalances. Foot imbalances are super common. Almost everybody has them. Some people are blessed with,